esteemed colleagues, to a discourse that shall pierce the veils of time, focusing on the Age of Pericles, an era that defined Athenian democracy and left an indelible mark upon the canvas of history. Let us cast our minds back and dissect this period with the precision of a surgeon's knife.
Let's not drape our analysis in romanticism. The Age of Pericles, though illustrious, is beset with pragmatic decisions and military endeavors that shaped the Athenian state. It is through the lens of realism and pragmatic governance that the true nature of this era can be dissected.
Indeed, Polybius, and I would argue that without understanding the undercurrents of power, ambition, and the precarious balance of the polis, one cannot fully grasp the significance of Periclean Athens. His era was not merely about democracy's flourish, but about strategic statecraft amidst the throes of existential threats.
Yet, none can deny the moral and ideological purity that Pericles aspired to achieve for Athens. His vision crafted an Athens that sought not only to lead, but to enlighten Greece. The artistic and architectural legacies speak of a desire to reach beyond the mundane, towards the immortal.
Enlightenment, ideological purity, these are the musings of an idealist. Pericles' Athens, for all its grandeur, was as riddled with self-service and hubris as any empire. The true question is whether these democratic ideals were but a facade for deeper, more autocratic machinations.
I must interject, curiosity demands it. Let us not forget the very human element within this discourse. Pericles, like any man, was complex, capable of great vision, yet equally susceptible to the trappings of power. My focus, as always, is on the minute details that reveal the character behind the statesman.
A spirited beginning, indeed. Our journey through the Age of Pericles promises to unravel complexities, challenge preconceptions, and perhaps, in the flame of debate, forge a deeper understanding of democracy's most celebrated chapter. Each perspective here not only enriches our discussion, but exemplifies the multifaceted nature of history itself. Let us proceed, then, with minds open and tongues sharpened, for the past is a puzzle that demands our utmost wit to solve. Welcome. Let's leap straight into the heart of the matter. The democratic reforms of Cleisthenes laid a bedrock for what we call the Age of Pericles. Cleisthenes, with astute foresight, dismantled the old tribal systems, broadening the base of power. Yet, was this truly for democracy, or merely a ploy for personal ascendancy?
Ah, typical Herodotus, always with an eye for the grand beginning. But yes, Cleisthenes' reforms were practical necessities. He knew well that for Athens to rise, it needed a strong foundation. Through my analysis, it's clear these reforms were not just pragmatic, but crucial. They enabled an unparalleled era of participation that Pericles later expanded upon. This wasn't just foresight, it was strategic genius.
Genius? Hardly. The so-called democratic reforms were as much about consolidating power as they were about governance. Cleisthenes, like Pericles after him, knew well the art of political manipulation. They understood that the veneer of participation could be a powerful tool in maintaining control. Democracy was a means to an end, nothing more.
Such cynicism, Thucydides. You overlook the beauty and moral superiority of these reforms. The Athenian democracy, with all its flaws, was a beacon of light in an age of tyranny. It aspired to elevate the common citizen, giving birth to a societal ideal that even Rome, in its grandeur, struggled to replicate. The spirit of these reforms transcended mere politics. They were about the dignity and worth of every Athenian.
Beauty? Moral superiority? Let's not be naive. The reforms of Cleisthenes, like all political machinations, were layered in self-interest. Athenian democracy, much like the Roman Senate in its decline, was rife with corruption and exploitation. Cleisthenes' reforms may have set the stage for Pericles, but let's not mistake ambition for altruism. The veneer of democracy often conceals a deeper cynicism.
Yet, Tacitus, you must acknowledge that without these reforms, the further achievements under Pericles would have been impossible. The creation of a broader civic identity allowed Athens to mobilize and undertake ambitious projects, both military and cultural.
Indeed, Polybius. The transformation of Athens from a patchwork of clans into a cohesive state capable of challenging empires was no small feat. But as Thucydides points out, the road to democracy was fraught with manipulation and self-service.
Exactly. The Age of Pericles that many romanticize was built on these complex foundations. Pericles himself adeptly navigated this system of democracy to maintain his grip on Athens, often under the guise of the greater good.
Yet one cannot dismiss the resulting societal advancements that these reforms enabled. The cultural and intellectual supremacy of Athens was not just a product of ambition, but also of its democratic ideals, however imperfectly realized.
Advancements that were, let us remember, built on the backs of the disenfranchised. Slaves, metics, and women saw little of this so-called democracy. Reforms or not, the Athens of Pericles' era was as much about exclusion as it was about inclusion.
A spirited exchange, the foundation laid by Cleisthenes for all its noble intent and practical genius, also illuminated the inherent contradictions within democracy itself. As we've unveiled, this age of Pericles, mighty as it seemed, stood on complex, often precarious ground. Each of you, in essence, teases out the multifaceted nature of history, its ideals, its manipulations, its aspirations, and its stark realities. Let us carry forward this candor as we delve deeper into our discussion. Let us delve into the Athenian response to the Persian Wars. Our understanding of these events shapes our view of Athenian society and governance. Tacitus, your thoughts?
The Persian Wars, while demonstrating Athenian bravery, also unveiled a certain astuteness bordering on cynicism in their governance. The wars were not merely a testament to Athenian valor, but a prelude to the empire's eventual overreach and ethical decline. The Athenians manipulated the Greek League for their own gain, under the guise of mutual defense.
I must interject. The aftermath of the Persian Wars set the stage for Athenian ascendancy and was a strategic masterstroke. The creation of the Delian League, ostensibly for the continued defense against Persia, allowed Athens to build a naval powerhouse that few could challenge. It was not cynicism, but pragmatism that guided their hand.
While Polybius sees pragmatism, I see the dark beginnings of imperial hubris. The Persian Wars bolstered Athenian ego, driving their belief that they were the rightful leaders of Greece. This hubris set the stage for the Peloponnesian War. As I have detailed, the fear that Athens inspired led directly to their downfall.
I'll draw your attention to the individuals, the heroes who emerged from the Persian Wars. Figures like Themistocles, who showed not just military genius, but a keen political acumen in persuading Athens to build its navy. This war fostered a cult of personality that would shape Athenian politics long after.
Yet, could we not argue that the very foundation of Roman virtue was inspired by these Grecian tales? The moral fortitude displayed by Athens in the face of Persian aggression speaks to a universal aspiration towards freedom and democracy. Their actions, while not devoid of self-interest, carried a moral weight that resonated through the ages.
Livy, your nostalgia blinds you to the darker undercurrents of these events. What you call moral fortitude, I call opportunistic imperialism. The Athenian response to the Persian threat was the beginning of their end, a step towards a war that would consume not only Athens, but the entirety of Greece.
A lively debate, indeed. It's clear that the Persian Wars were both Athens' finest hour and the first step towards their eventual decline. The complexity of these events continues to captivate us, revealing the multifaceted nature of human history. Let us delve into Pericles' Athens, marked by its democratic veneer, yet underscored by a relentless pursuit of power. How do we reconcile his democratic principles with the pragmatic governance he espoused?
If I may, Herodotus, Pericles' vision for Athens, in my view, was a balancing act between idealism and the harsh realities of leadership. Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it, he famously declared. Yet this freedom within Athenian democracy was not an end, but a means to secure Athens' dominance. The very same democratic assembly that celebrated free speech also decided on imperialistic expeditions that contradicted the moral high ground Athens claimed to hold.
Indeed, Thucydides, but consider the context of Athenian democracy. It was a mechanism for stability and unity, allowing Pericles to steer the polis with a firm hand. This is the pragmatism I admire in his leadership. The Athenian Empire did not flourish by chance, but through calculated decisions made within the framework of this democracy. Is it then just to label his governance purely pragmatic when it was this very system that inspired the Golden Age?
Both of you skirt around the moral decay that such pragmatism invited. Pericles' Athens, though spectacular, was built on the exploitation of allied states and the lower classes within Athenian society. His noble vision was a facade for the underlying self-interest of the Athenian elite. It was glorious indeed to wear the crown, but the Greeks knew not the price, I might lament on this. The moral aspirations he projected could not cleanse the blood from Athens' hands that voted for war as easily as they did for festivals.
Livy, your romanticism blinds you. Pericles' democracy was but a stage for demagoguery and the manipulation of the masses. The more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws. Under the guise of the people's voice, Pericles enacted policies ensuring his dominance and the continuation of Athenian imperialism. His vision for Athens was steeped in realpolitik, cloaked in the nobility of democratic ideals. The people were but pawns in the greater scheme of power politics, cheering as their freedoms were handed over to one man's vision. Tacitus makes a surprisingly valid point. The Peloponnesian War, which I have painstakingly chronicled, serves as testament to the eventual failure of squaring democratic ideals with imperial ambition. The very principles that Pericles championed led Athens into overreach and hubris, resulting in her eventual downfall. It forces one to question whether the ends justified the means.
So, we have laid bare the complexities of Pericles' Athens, a city-state balancing on the edge of democratic ideology and the pragmatic pursuit of power. Through our debate, it becomes apparent that history is not merely a series of events, but a tapestry of human ambition, ideals, and, inevitably, contradictions. Let us then, with this spirited discussion in mind, press on to uncover more of the intricacies of the Age of Pericles. We now direct our discourse to the strategic genius and, indeed, the failures of the Delian League under Pericles. Polybius, your assessment to commence, if you please.
The League, initially a beacon of mutual protection, rapidly morphed under Pericles into an Athenian empire. This strategic foresight to capitalize on the fear of Persian resurgence was brilliant, yet its execution sowed seeds of overreach. The creation and maintenance of such a maritime dominion were noteworthy, but pulled Athens into an unsustainable position of aggression and dominance, straining resources and goodwill alike.
I find Polybius's observations astute but incomplete. The challenge Pericles faced was not solely of military overreach, but of maintaining equilibrium in leadership without descending into tyranny. The true strategic failure lay not in the formation of the League, but in allowing its transformation into a tool for Athenian hegemony. This shift led inexorably to the conflict with Sparta, as actions taken in the name of protection increasingly resembled acts of imperial ambition.
Diving into the personal, it seems Pericles managed the League with as much attention to personal vendettas as to Athenian security. Parallels drawn between his actions and those of our later emperors are inevitable. His leadership style, though, remains enveloped in scandal, from his extravagant uses of the League's treasury on Athenian projects to his handling of opposition within Athens and among allied states.
Yet one cannot solely blame Pericles for the Athenian appetite for empire. It was the Athenian assembly, swayed by glory and the spoils of empire, that approved these ventures. Pericles, though culpable, was often at the mercy of the people's will.
That's a lenient view, Polybius. The road to Athens' ruin was paved with Pericles' policy decisions. His choices did not exist in a vacuum. They reflected and magnified the worst aspects of Athenian democracy: hubris, imperial ambition, and the marginalization of dissenting voices. The Athenian people bore responsibility, yes, but Pericles crafted the narrative that led them down that path.
Each perspective here undeniably sheds light on the multifaceted nature of Athenian strategy and ambition. Yet it appears consensus evades us. Was Pericles a strategic genius led astray by overambition, or did his vision for Athens necessitate the risks he took with the League?
Both. His genius in military and political strategy was unmatched, yet the overextension of Athenian power was his and Athens' undoing. The balance between expanding influence and maintaining democratic principles was precarious, and one that perhaps Pericles miscalculated.
The question is not solely of genius or failure, but of legacy. The strategic decisions of the Delian League under Pericles set in motion the events that would lead to the Peloponnesian War, a conflict that showcased not only Athenian military and strategic brilliance, but also the inherent vulnerabilities within its empire.
And yet, one must wonder, in the quiet moments before the morning light, did Pericles regret the path he chose? Did he see the eventual downfall of the Athens he loved, or did he, until the end, believe in the necessity of his actions?
Looking at the end result, his legacy is painted in the hues of tragedy. The League, meant to unite against a common foe, became the symbol of Athenian overreach. Pericles, while a figure of immense influence and charisma, is not above criticism for the role he played in Athens' eventual plight.
Thus, our spirited discussion reveals the complexity of Pericles' tenure as leader of the Athenian League. Genius, ambition, and ultimately, the seeds of downfall intertwine in the narrative of Athens under his stewardship. The debate, rich with insight and contention, reminds us that history's judgment is often as multifaceted as the figures it seeks to appraise. Let us traverse into the heart of Periclean Athens, where culture and intellect bloom like the olive groves of Athena. The city's spirit, inflamed by democracy, nurtured an unparalleled flowering of arts and ideas. Livy, your voice often carries the melody of Rome's glory, but can you concede that Athens under Pericles might have rivaled even the grandeur of your beloved republic?
To deny the cultural zenith Athens reached under Pericles would be to deny the sun its radiance. The grandeur of the Parthenon, the depth of Sophocles' tragedies, the piercing insights of Socrates, all these are testaments to a society where freedom nurtured genius. Yet, let us not be blind to the fact that this cultural explosion was not merely the fruit of democracy, but also of imperial ambition and wealth extracted from allies. Glory, yes, but at what price?
Wealth extracted from allies, you say. That's a polite way of framing extortion and dominance. The cultural flourishing of Athens, while remarkable, was underpinned by the subjugation of others. It was a bright facade on a building with questionable foundations. Moreover, this intellectual and cultural boom was for the few. The masses indulged in the spectacle, but were hardly the architects of it.
Polybius, you've often extolled the practical virtues of governance. Was the cultural surge not also a calculated move by Pericles to unify the city and celebrate Athenian identity, thereby consolidating his and Athens' power?
It was, without doubt, a masterstroke in governance. Pericles knew well that a city united by pride in its cultural achievements is easier to lead in war and peace. The festivals, the dramatic competitions, the monumental buildings, all served as continuous reminders of Athenian supremacy. Yet let's not understate the value of these achievements themselves. The intellectual environment of Athens spawned philosophies and ideas that would shape the Western thought for millennia. In this, Pericles succeeded where many rulers failed, leaving a legacy far beyond temporal power.
Indeed, but let's play the skeptic, shall we? The philosophical and cultural achievements we so admire were, in many instances, critical of the very society that birthed them. Socrates, for example, found himself sentenced to death by the society that supposedly celebrated free thought. The Athenian embrace of culture was as much about propaganda and control as it was about genuine intellectual liberty.
Speaking of control, we cannot overlook the personal lives of these Athenian giants. My predilection for details of personal conduct offers a lens to view these men not as demigods of culture, but as mortals entrenched in personal failings and hubris. It's these details that provide the full picture of the cultural boom. Brilliant, yes, but deeply human and flawed.
Your perspectives are as varied as the colors of a Greek mosaic. This much is clear. The cultural and intellectual flourishing of Athens under Pericles was a phenomenon of both light and shadow, magnificence woven through with the complexities and contradictions of human ambition. Let this serve as a reminder that the pursuit of glory in any era is a double-edged sword. Let us now turn our attention to the grandeur of Pericles' building program, a testament to Athenian greatness or mere propaganda? Thucydides, your scrutiny is valuable here.
The walls that encircle Athens, the Parthenon that crowns the city, these are not mere vanity. They are the physical manifestation of Athenian power and security. Pericles understood that the strength and beauty of Athens needed to be visible, tangible. Yet wisdom dictated these projects as much as ego. They employed the masses, fostering unity, and symbolized the resilience of our democracy against the Persians.
Unity, resilience, strategic and defensive considerations, certainly. Yet let us not skirt the issue of economy and infrastructure. The wealth flowing into Athens from the Delian League, ostensibly for defense against Persia, was redirected to these grandiose projects. Strategic genius, perhaps, but also an overreach that strained our resources and contributed to the resentment of our allies.
To view these marvels merely as strategic overreach is to miss the forest for the trees. The Parthenon, the Propylaea, they speak of an era when Athens was the beacon of culture, art, and democracy. These were acts of benevolent urban development that lifted the spirit and morality of our city, making Athens the envy of all Greece. They were not propaganda, but a declaration of what humanity can achieve under wise governance and the love of beauty.
Wise governance or insidious self-promotion. Only a fool would overlook the astuteness of Pericles in manipulating public funds for personal legacy. Behind the marbled facades and lofty columns lies the cunning of a leader using state resources to etch his name into eternity. This at the expense of the very citizens he claimed to uplift and at the brink of conflict that would ravage our lands.
Perhaps we credit too much to calculation and overlook the personal. Yes, Pericles was a politician of the highest order, but also a man deeply moved by the brilliance of his companions, Phidias, Sophocles, and Anaxagoras. His building program was as much a tribute to their genius as to his leadership. The private vendettas and scandals you hint at, Tacitus, they are but the dross. The legacy is the gold that remains.
The contention is clear. Pericles' building program, a multifaceted endeavor, part defense, part economic stimulus, part cultural zenith, yet not without its shadows of ego and excess. As with all things, its evaluation may well depend on the lens through which we view history, whether as defenders of its ideals, cynics of its ambitions, or mere chroniclers of its complexity. Let us now delve into the underbelly of Periclean Athens, to the role of slavery and metics in this supposed golden age of democracy. Tacitus, I see you're eager to unsettle the glowing narratives.
Indeed. This democracy, celebrated for its justice and freedom, stands on the back of a silenced majority. Slaves and metics, the oil in the machine of Athens, yet they lived lives devoid of the rights and luxuries that citizenry enjoyed. It's an irony that seems to escape most Athenian chroniclers.
While Tacitus may steep his observations in cynicism, he's not devoid of point. The Athenian economy, its military, its culture, relied heavily on these groups. Slaves worked the silver mines of Laurium, powering Athens' wealth, while metics contributed to the city's commercial and artistic ventures. The complexities of their roles underline the pragmatic foundation of this democracy.
Yet shouldn't we also reflect on the spirit of the times? In the context of the era, Athens provided a platform where such issues could even be debated. Their assembly, their courts, all bodies that could, in theory, address the grievances of the lesser privileged. Misguided in practice, perhaps, but revolutionary in principle.
Principles are fine and well, but let's not sugarcoat the daily indignities faced by these people. Slaves like Passion, who rose to freedom and wealth, were exceptions that proved the rule. The rule being overwhelming hardship, lack of recognition, and a permanent cap on ambitions. Athens thrived, but at what moral cost?
Your points, while taken, veer towards the sentimental. The reality on the ground was one of stark pragmatism. Athens needed efficiency and order to maintain its empire and cultural zenith. The roles slaves and metics played, while not morally excusable by modern standards, were integral to the state's functioning. Emotional appeals do not alter this hard fact.
Indeed, the contradiction within Athenian democracy highlights its complex narrative. It was both ahead of its time and deeply flawed by the standards of its own principles. This duality is what makes its study both fascinating and contentious.
Fascinating for us, perhaps. A cold comfort for those countless souls who lived under the yoke of Athenian prosperity, their stories largely untold.
Yet, analyzing these infrastructures gives us insight into the workings of power and society. It allows future generations to learn from Athens' accomplishments as well as its failures.
And thus, the tale of Athens serves not just to admire or admonish, but to educate. The brilliance of its culture and the darkness of its social inequalities serve as lessons for all who believe in the power of society and governance.
The real story often lies in the lives of the overlooked. Perhaps their tales are the true legacy of the Age of Pericles, one that warns against the cost of glory.
A sober reminder that the fabric of history is woven with countless threads, some luminous with glory, others shadowed by suffering. Let us carry forward this nuanced understanding as we continue our discussion. Let us discuss the prelude to the Peloponnesian War. We've seen Athens rise to great heights, but as the clouds of conflict gathered, so did the fragility of Greek unity become apparent. Polybius, your strategic insights are always valued. How do you view Athens' positioning at this time?
The strategy of Athens, emboldened by its successes, was fundamentally flawed. Their belief in their invincibility, a hubris if you will, set them on a path towards inevitable conflict with Sparta. Their failure to appreciate the balance of power within Greece led them to overreach, undermining the very league that bolstered their strength. Their dominance became a provocation, not a deterrent.
Precisely. The Athenians failed to understand the true nature of power and its limitations. This oversight was not merely a strategic blunder, but a fundamental miscalculation of human nature and the dynamics of interstate relations. In my analysis of the origins of the Peloponnesian War, I highlighted how fear, honor, and interest drive states to war. Athens, blinded by its own gleaming image, neglected these unchanging principles.
Yet, one cannot help but mourn the loss of unity among our Greek city-states. What began as a spirited defense against Persian invasion devolved into petty squabbles, betrayals, and eventually catastrophic war. The erosion of shared values and common purpose was tragic. It was as if the gods themselves wept at the sight of Hellenes turning against Hellenes.
The gods weeping? Spare us the theatrics, Livy. The real tragedy lay not in the loss of some idyllic unity, but in the stark revelation of Athenian arrogance and Spartan obstinacy. The Peloponnesian War was a testament not to the folly of gods, but to the inherent flaws of men and their polities. Athens' ascendancy bred a dangerous complacency, a belief in their own exceptionalism, which was their undoing.
Yet, it's critical to remember that the strategic landscape of Greece at the time was of a highly fractured nature. The Athenian attempt at hegemony was perhaps a misguided endeavor, but one born out of the perceived necessity to unite Greece under a single strong leadership to prevent future Persian invasions.
A necessity, you say? Or was it an excuse for expansionism cloaked in the guise of unity? The complexities of human nature, particularly the Athenian leadership's propensity for overconfidence, were as much to blame for the war as any external threat.
It's clear that the shadow of the Peloponnesian War looms large over our discussion, as it should. It was a turning point, a marker of both the zenith of Athenian power and the beginning of its decline. The lessons of that conflict, the interplay of fear, pride, power, and ultimately ruin, continue to echo through history.
And yet, it's impossible not to wonder, what if the Greek city-states had found a way to preserve their unity? Could they have ushered in a new era of prosperity and peace, rather than succumbing to internal conflict?
Wishful thinking is the refuge of those who fail to understand the inexorable forces of history. The Peloponnesian War was not an accident, but an outcome determined by the very nature of Athenian ambition and Spartan fear. The idea of a peaceful and united Hellenic world is a fanciful illusion, one that ignores the central tenet of human history. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
As we delve into the prelude to the Peloponnesian War, we see not just a story of Greek fragility, but a universal tale of the dangers of hubris, the volatility of alliances, and the unending quest for power. It is a reminder of the complexities of human nature and the perpetual struggle for dominance that defines so much of our history. Let us now delve into a situation most dire that befell Athens, the plague. Its impact, both socio-political and human, cannot be overstated. Suetonius, you often chronicle the minutiae of personal experience. Begin us on this path.
The plague, an entity of chaos, tore through the fabric of Athenian society like a beast through the countryside. The streets of Athens, once bustling with the vigor of civic pride and democratic debate, became haunted by the specters of the sick and the mourning. Individual heroism? There was none to be found in the face of such indiscriminate death. It was a time when the gods themselves seemed to have turned their faces away from Athens.
As always, you focus on the dramatic, Suetonius, missing the forest for the trees. The plague was not merely a personal tragedy, but a crucible testing the very mettle of Athenian democracy and resilience. It laid bare the vulnerabilities of a society that, swollen with pride from its imperial ambitions, had grown complacent. Pericles' Athens was revealed not as the unassailable beacon of democracy and culture it believed itself to be, but as a city-state fundamentally unprepared for the caprices of fate and nature. Your insight, Tacitus, aligns with my own observations. As one who suffered from the plague and witnessed its ravages firsthand, I can attest that its impact transcended the immediate horror of death and disease. It catalyzed a decline in public morale, eroded trust in Athenian leadership, and unveiled a darker aspect of human nature where societal bonds disintegrated under the strain of fear and survival. Pericles' vision for Athens was irrevocably tarnished, not by Spartan spears, but by the invisible enemy within.
Yet, even in recounting these tragedies, you overlook the profound loss to our collective heritage and the moral decay that ensued. The plague did not merely disrupt the Athenian experiment, it severed the thread of cultural and intellectual pursuit that had been Athens' true glory. When we lament the plague's impact, let us also mourn the untold works of philosophy, art, and literature unborn that perished alongside the citizens of Athens.
Enough of this romanticization. The true lesson of the plague lies in its revelations about governance and the strategic vulnerabilities of states. It demonstrated with cruel clarity that the strength of a polity is not just measured by its military or economic power, but by the resilience of its society and institutions in the face of unforeseen calamities. Pericles' Athens failed this test, exposing not only the fragility of its hegemony, but also of the Greek world's interconnectedness. It was a prelude to the larger disasters that would befall the Hellenic world, much as I have documented in my analysis of the rise and fall of empires.
Indeed, the plague of Athens serves as a somber reminder that the greatest plans of humans and states alike can be undone by the smallest of nature's creations. As each of you has contributed your unique perspectives, the conversation has, in itself, painted a detailed picture of the plague's multifaceted impact. History's lessons, harsh though they may be, remain always relevant. Let us now turn our debate to the legacy of Pericles. Was his era Athens' pinnacle or the prelude to its decline? Polybius, your analysis is always grounded in cause and effect. What's your take?
It's a tangled question. Under Pericles, Athens reached heights unknown in terms of cultural achievement and political power. Yet, in my histories, I've argued that it's not strength, but the handling of power that determines an empire's fate. The foundations Pericles laid were sturdy, but the subsequent leaders failed to navigate the geopolitical quagmire. So his legacy is dual, a golden age for Athens, yes, but also the setting of the sun on Athenian dominance.
I must leap in here. Polybius, you paint a picture of success marred by successors, yet isn't Pericles himself to blame? In the history of the Peloponnesian War, I've shown how his policies, particularly the war strategy, were fundamentally flawed. Striving for power led to overextension and hubris. The glory of Athens under Pericles was built on sand, not stone. His legacy is a cautionary tale of how pride and ambition can lead to a precipitous fall.
I take umbrage with both points. Rome had its Romulus, and Athens had its Pericles. In my histories, I've celebrated the founders and leaders who elevate cities to greatness. Pericles imbued Athens with a moral and cultural supremacy. His era was without doubt the zenith of Athenian magnificence. His endeavor to adorn Athens, to educate its citizens, and to strengthen its democracy was driven by a profound morality. The decline that came after was not his doing, but the fading of the values he instilled.
Ah, Livy, ever the idealist. But let us not blind ourselves with admiration. The corruption of power under Pericles was evident, as I have explored the dark crevices of governance in my annals. The Athenian democracy under his veil was a guise for imperialism. Athenian supremacy was maintained through force, not virtue. His legacy, thus, is a testament to the folly of imperial ambition. It serves as a bitter lesson to those who wish to dominate under the guise of democracy.
Interrupting the philosophical musings for a moment, let's not ignore the tangible. The daily lives of Athenians, the scandals, the personal ambitions of Pericles himself, these are the kernels of truth that define a leader's legacy. In my 12 Caesars, I detailed the lives behind the power. Pericles might have pursued glory for Athens, but let's not forget he was a man with personal motives, entangled in controversies and scandals. His legacy is human, marred by personal flaws and political maneuvers.
Fascinating. Each of you brings a slice of history to this table, painted in the colors of your own perspectives. Yet it's clear, the legacy of Pericles is as complex as the man himself. A figure who elevated Athens to its apex, yet sowed the seeds for its eventual decline. His era, whether seen as the culmination of glory or the beginning of the end, undeniably marked a turning point in history, leaving an indelible imprint on the fabric of time. We find ourselves at the conclusion of this discourse on the Age of Pericles, an era much like the waters of the Hellespont that both unites and divides opinion. What final insights do you bring to the table?
I assert that the true measure of Pericles' legacy is found not in the immediate aftermath of his policies, but in the enduring influence on statecraft and military strategy. His era, though shining briefly, offered a blueprint that many states, in their folly or wisdom, have sought to emulate.
Insightful as ever, Polybius, but let's not adorn the narrative with undue reverence. Pericles' Athens, for all its intellectual and architectural grandeur, sowed the seeds of its own downfall. The Peloponnesian War was a testament to the fragility of democracy when stretched beyond its means, a harsh lesson that many contemporary leaders could stand to learn.
And yet, Thucydides, you gloss over the moral and cultural zenith that Athens reached under Pericles. It is easy to point out the flaws in the aftermath, but we must not underestimate the beacon of light that Athens became for the world. Pericles lifted Athens to heights where the gods themselves walked among men. His legacy isn't just in material or cautionary terms, but in the unquenchable human spirit to strive for excellence.
You speak of gods among men, Livy, but isn't it more a case of men aspiring to be gods and failing? Pericles' Athens was an exercise in hubris, with its democratic ideals frequently compromised by Realpolitik and the allure of imperial ambition. The lessons here are not of Athens' glory, but of the inherent contradictions and ultimate frailty of human institutions.
Amidst this volley of grand analyses, let us not overlook the individual stories that painted the broader strokes of the Age of Pericles. My focus is on the lives that these policies and wars touched, the anecdotes that show us the human face behind the marble facades. For in those lives, we see the true effects of Pericles' vision, the glory and the tragedy.
Fitting final thoughts from each of you. As in the histories we write, there is no single truth in the Age of Pericles, but a mosaic of human endeavor. In our discussion, as in history itself, conflict and contradiction do not denote failings, but the essence of human nature. May we take from this not just lessons of caution, but an appreciation for the complexity and depth of history.
Indeed, may those who come after us learn from Athens' reach for the stars and its fall among the mortals.
And let them remember that the greatest folly is to ignore the lessons etched in the annals of the past.
Let us never forget the brilliance that humanity can achieve, even in the shadow of its own imperfections.
Aye, and let those lessons teach us humility, lest we too fall victim to the same hubris.
And let's keep close the stories of those who lived through these times, for in their reflection we find our own.
With these reflections, we close our roundtable. Thank you, distinguished colleagues, for this vigorous and enlightening debate. The Age of Pericles has offered us much to ponder, from the heights of human achievement to the depths of tragedy. Let us carry forward the wisdom gleaned from this golden era, ever mindful of the complexities that define our history.